Welcome to GadgetCast
Yeah,
2.0. GadgetCast iOS 16.
which someone has pointed out that you have misspelled in the title. It says ISO 16.
Well, look, our ISO needs to be set properly.
ISO 16 is the better name, you know.
That'll get us great SEO because it's going to perfectly not work.
Yeah.
Shit. Okay, let's see.
Yeah.
Right there we go. All right, and then we go into here. And then we go to Studio. And then we go to this. And then we go to this. And then we go to this. And then we change it here. OS. Yay. iPhone 15? What was going on? How?
What were you doing today, Travis? I was
Bro,
wondering,
why do you
want to talk about the iPhone 15? You know, 14's not even out yet.
Here's the thing. ISO 16 and iPhone 15 are right around the corner. No one else knows about this. This is absolutely breaking news.
I mean, I think most people assume there will be an iPhone 15. ISO 16 though, I don't know. That might never happen.
You never know. You never know. All right, well, look. It's fine. Who cares? All right, let's get started because why not?
Agreed.
All right. GadgetCast starting up in 3, 2, 1, record.
Discovery's 4 computers now have primary control of critical vehicle functions.
3, 2, 1, 0, 0.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the GadgetCast. My name is Gregory McFadden, joined always with my co-host Travis M.C. P.
Space travel.
Man, you
just a big long pause on the name. You know,
you're the best at this.
That's how radio hosts do it. And you got to drag it out. Travis M.C.P.
There you go. I like that. That's the way you should do it every time. Every single time.
That'll be every intro going forward.
Welcome back, everybody. It's been a little while since we've been on because obviously last week was the day before WWDC, which would have made our show completely irrelevant very fast. And then for audio podcast listeners, you haven't heard from us in a couple of weeks because Greg forgot to upload that audio. And by the time
that's a YouTube exclusive now. People can go watch the YouTube channel. That's a lost episode. You know, every podcast needs a lost episode, and now we have one. So if you want to listen to it, you have to go on the YouTube channel.
I think the only thing that came from that episode that is now not irrelevant anymore, because we were talking about WWDC stuff, and we can totally talk about that today, was like my last video that I was on my way to releasing. Now I've released it, and moving on from that and trying to go into other things. So if you want to hear about that, go to youtube.com/GadgetCast. Watch the episode before this one.
I didn't release that episode because I didn't want to disappoint the GadgetCast fans when they found out it was Travis's last tech video, at least for a little while.
At least for now.
So, I was just sparing them the sadness. I was shielding my precious fan base.
I can appreciate that.
Discovering the truth.
I can appreciate that. All right, cool.
It wasn't laziness.
Had nothing to do with that. Well,
it was a calculated decision.
It was very calculated. So look, lots of things to talk about. Last week was WWDC. And the M2 has come out, which I want to talk a little bit about. Of course, the newest version of Mac OS, the newest iOS, watchOS, iPadOS. There's actually a lot to talk about. We might have to do a supercast to really kind of break some of it down. But and by the way, we're not going to get through all of it today. There's just no way. There's just so many aspects to each of it. But let's take each bit as it is, and then also iPhone 15. Literally, even though I accidentally put that as a title here, it actually is something we want to talk about because of the European law going in where USB-C has to be a thing. And apparently, according to what John Prosser said on Front Page Tech, you can't just throw in a dongle. which is interesting because that would have been the loophole. So let's start there before we get into WWDC, because this will be a pretty quick conversation. Do you think that we're actually going to see an iPhone with USB-C because of this? Like, is this going to be the thing, or are they still going to figure out a way around this either by going portless or something weird?
I think if it, I haven't been like too up to date on the law if it actually passed and all that stuff. But if it's a law, I feel like if there's no way around it, I feel like they'll just do it. And based on rumors, it might seem like they want to go over to USB-C anyway, because the data transfer speeds on Lightning just aren't fast enough for some of the stuff they're now doing with ProRes video. So it's actually a detriment to iPhone if they're gonna. And we might get 8K recording this year on iPhone 14. The video files are only getting larger, and the best way to offload that still is a physical connection. So Apple might just need to do it as a feature anyway, because Lightning just isn't up to the standards that we expect with fast data transfer speeds. And they're really kind of holding the iPhone back as a pro device because these cameras are just so amazing now. And people were already using them to incorporate into all types of videos, ranging from like YouTube. And now as they get even better, as they support these pro codecs that actual professionals use as a standard for television and movies, if the shot looks good enough, if they can just insert an iPhone shot, if they have all the tools there, well, of course they'll use it as a tool. Maybe some movie studios will buy a bunch of iPhones just to get a certain kind of shot that they can get with a smaller camera. I remember that started to happen when the DSLR revolution came, and all of a sudden people were using these Canon cameras, and then you'd have filmmakers like placing them in like the sink to get just like this really quick 5-second shot that you wouldn't really put like a big expensive professional camera in because you don't want to destroy it. And then GoPros and all that stuff, obviously very, very popular in a bunch of content creation. But if the iPhone is going to stick to Lightning and we're going to have to keep airdropping, which is great, but when you airdrop these larger files, it takes forever. I just think they have to adopt it as just a feature at this point. So maybe before they really wanted to get around this, I'm in a way, I'm sure Apple is fighting this every step of the way, but I almost wouldn't be surprised knowing how our politics seem to work. I know the EU technically is a little bit stricter, and they usually get things done a little bit better than maybe our current political system. But I wouldn't be surprised if at this point, because this has been, so many years, this has been kind of threatened that they're going to do this one day. I wouldn't be surprised if Apple, behind the scenes, gave them the blessing and went, okay, we'll be ready.
Yeah, well, here's the funny thing about this. They had a lot of time to come up with another connector, and they just didn't. They refused to come off of Lightning for God knows what reason. USB-C is, just for people who don't remember, has been out since 2014. This is not a new connector at all. So in all that time, if they really wanted to come up with something that was, even better than USB-C and maybe help move the industry towards something, they had a lot of time and they didn't do it. So it is what it is. The connector is an old connector at this point, but because of the way it's created and built, the new standards that keep coming out with higher and higher data rates are actually still compatible, including USB 4, which is now only available on USB-C. So we are seeing some really great data transfer speeds and fast charging. So we're pretty good to go for a while. But I don't feel sorry for Apple at all in this particular case. This is the one thing they kind of neglected over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I don't feel sorry for them, but I don't like this kind of like revisionist history about the Lightning port. When the Lightning port came out, it was actually ahead of its time. Apple was on like this third-party USB-C board, and apparently from everything like I've read, they were really like dragging their heels trying to get this port connector out, and Apple really wanted to get a smaller connector on the iPhone, so they basically went and just did it themselves. And at the time when Apple switched over to the Lightning port, you have to remember the old port that they used to have was this really big, clunky. It was like a 30-pin, like a big strip port. It was very, very not intuitive to connect and disconnect. I recently just got a new iPod Nano. I bought eBay, and it has one of those old connectors, and it's such a pain to like kind of remove it and plug it in. That it's like, yeah, this really was a big pain that Lightning solved. It was the first port that I ever used that was actually reversible. You could plug it in either way, and it was really cool like that. So I do have to say, like, when Apple introduced this, other phones did not have a port that was just this effortless. And eventually USB-C came, and it's like, okay, maybe they should have adopted that. But I do also, I always say this every time, I do also sympathize with the fact that they face such backlash for changing that port out. You can go watch news stories on YouTube and they're like, why are you changing the port? Is this a money grab? Is this just a way for Apple to make billions of dollars on selling you new cables? And it's kind of like, okay. So they're kind of like, for some users, of course, people who own an iPad or a MacBook at this point are going to go, of course, I want the same charger. Why do I have to use a different cable? Why do I have to bring all these different cables along with me? I should be able to use the same one. But there probably will be a certain segment of the consumer base that just has all Lightning products that's going to be mad at this move. They're going to be like, I can't believe I have to go out, take maybe all these cables I bought. Maybe they're plugged in all over my house and I have to replace them all. And that will also just create another negative news story when it comes out, I bet. I predict in 1 year, if this does happen, there's just going to be a certain segment of the audience that isn't hardcore tech people going, why did you switch the port again? Oh my God, it looks exactly the same. What's the difference? Why can't I use my older port? So we might run into that same news story again. And I will say one more thing, if you want to be, if you want to take Apple at their word of why they didn't change it for this long, I personally wouldn't buy this argument because I agree with you that they probably should have done this a little while ago, especially when they were switching the iPads over. I think that was maybe the time to do it. And maybe when they introduced the Pro phones, that was their best excuse to say, it's a Pro phone. We need a new port. You could have had the regular phones on Lightning for a couple extra years to help people transition over. But when they did introduce the Lightning port, they said this is a port we plan to use for the next decade. And that was with the iPhone 5.
This is the 10th year.
The 10th year of Lightning. They would have kept their word. So maybe Apple somewhere, maybe they're like, we have to keep our word. We said 10 years and we mean it. I don't buy that personally. I think Apple isn't afraid to do a lot of other things that a lot of customers don't like. But maybe that was that. Maybe in the back, like, we have to keep our word. We said 10 years. We mean 10 years.
Yeah, well, they legitimately, this September, 10 years is up. So ironically, they're being pushed to kind of move forward. Now, of course, this doesn't really get enforced for a couple of years. And maybe by that point, they're mag-safing everything or something. Who knows? Like, who knows? But time will tell. So it's an interesting thing for the EU to now essentially make a change for the entire world as far as iPhones go.
Yeah, I can almost imagine that we've heard rumors for so long that Apple has been moving towards a portless device. And as we all know with rumors, technically Apple is probably exploring a bunch of different things to do with iPhones. I'm sure they've had USB-C on iPhones for like the past, I'm sure they've had it since 2014 as an option if they ever wanted to do it. They already know how to do it. I'm sure they've made a portless iPhone where it has no ports and it just uses MagSafe. But I think maybe during the development of all of that, I think there were just features that Apple implemented with their video. And I think they probably are acknowledging to themselves, anything we do with MagSafe, anything we do with wireless data transfer at this point might just not be ready. Might not be ready enough to put in an iPhone because, again, the ProRes video on 4K, it's a very large file. It takes forever to export using either AirDrop or a Lightning cable. And if we have rumors of even higher video standards, that of 8K video with ProRes, how are you going to get that off your phone? Yeah,
it's time. Yeah. Apple, it's time. So we'll see what happens in the next couple of years. Now, back to WWDC. Can we talk a little bit about some of the things we learned? Do we start with M2 or do we start with the software? I think M2 is pretty quick to talk about because it's only on 2 products and there's not a lot of things to dig into.
I say M2 is the most interesting. I say we save it, make people listen to the whole episode. I'm going to be evil. I'm going to say we save that. Let's talk about software. Let's talk about iOS 16. I think that's also pretty popular. We'll give you a popular one. We'll talk about that. I got to be honest. I was watching this press conference going into it. I think the leaks around software this year have been basically almost non-existent. And I was pleasantly surprised, Travis, with all of the enhancements that they brought to iOS 16. There were more features and more improvements than I thought there would be going into this. And I don't think you've installed any like the developer betas or anything like that, but I have it on my phone. I've been playing around with it, and I'm enjoying a lot of the new features. I like the lock screen customization a lot. They have like these cool dynamic wallpapers. They showed it off in the presentation. It's a really smooth mechanism right now. And I'm actually surprised how stable this is for a beta 1. It is pretty smooth. And there was, I think, like a couple weeks before the presentation, there was a rumor that came out that went, Apple's way behind with iOS development. It's really buggy right now. iOS 16 is delayed and all like these like weird news stories. And I'm playing with it now. And I got to say, that does not seem to be the case. I wouldn't recommend anyone install it. It's still a beta. Anything could go wrong. But the only bad feature I'm noticing about this beta is battery life. But that's going to be with any beta at this point.
Yeah, I think as we look at iOS
look at
16,
Travis, look at him. He's, for the YouTube viewers, he brought up a nice little infographic here. He's got the whole website. We can give you a visual, with iOS 16, giving the visual experience is good. Travis, what do you think about the new lock screen?
I like it, and to me, it very heavily implies a version of always on display. So it's a soft confirmation of always on display. So the people that are watching on YouTube, you can see kind of the displays here for the lock screen, and you can see that there's the clock and then some widgets that are there. And I think those are the things you would see as OLED turns off everything that's not being shown other than the times. If you've seen an Android phone, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And the fact that software is now in place for this, I think really gives us a good indication that we probably will see something similar to that hopefully this time around. I mean, they've done it on the Apple Watch. Why wouldn't you do it on the phone? I love the new widgets on the lock screen. I'm looking forward to seeing that. I'm a big fan of widgets, always have been. The notifications kind of bunching up in the bottom and then expanding up that we're looking at here. I'm unsure. I need to see that in work, working with it. I mean, have you had a lot of notifications and done this yet? Messed around with this?
Does Mr. Greg's Gadgets have a lot of notifications? Oh, you bet he does. Yeah. It's a better, I think, visual implementation of where notifications are and how people hold their phones. Before, you would have to swipe up from the top. A lot of these phones are getting very big nowadays. It's very likely your thumb is right in the bottom. So it's a quicker way and a more intuitive way to get to your notifications. And it looks a little bit visually better as well. I really like when you go on like the lock screen now, if you have new notifications there, rather than just showing you like a bunch of notifications cluttering up your lock screen initially, it'll just say 5 new notifications. And then you like swipe up and you can kind of see them all. So I kind of like that. I like how you can interact with that and expand it. It looks a little visually better. I think the placement makes a little bit more sense. But again, that's like a very small change to how notifications, the handling of notifications is pretty much unchanged, just a different area for them, and visually looks good. I think the cooler thing is the live activities, which I really haven't played around with. I'm not sure if it's in the beta or if I use anything that's in the beta, but I think they use the example of like a sports game. If you're tracking like a sports game, well, during that whole game, you could have like this little notification thing in the whole bottom, and it would be persistent, and it would give you like the score or something like that. And that's also where like media controls will pop up for YouTube, and you can have multiple of them. So I know I was listening to music. They had like the little player down there, like a mini player. And then I set a timer, Travis, and that kind of showed up as an event. So the timer was also there the whole time. So you had like multiple things that you could see on the bottom. So I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, for sports fanatics, it's going to be a must-have. So I can appreciate it for that. Kind of new streamlined ways for folks.
So before we get into that, I want to say, were you surprised with how much or maybe how little customization Apple is giving you with like the lock screen?
Well, and creating multiple lock screens is kind of fun.
Yeah.
I like that idea. Like there's a lot of really cool things going on here. We're going to go ahead and play their little video without sound here in the background. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like over the last couple of years, we have seen Apple do things that they have not been known to do in previous years. And I think that's coming from leadership. They're like more open to, because I mean, quite frankly, what else is there? Like every year you're supposed to come up with something, right? These are the things that are low hanging fruit. Customization has been a long asked for thing in iOS by a lot of people. So it's an easy low hanging fruit thing. And they're doing their own version of it, which I like. I think it's really very cool. Am I surprised by it? Only somewhat, because again, we've seen that more and more over time. the thing that would shock me is if they ever allow us to just take all the icons off the screen and have a little drawer like an Android, which is the whole thing.
It's still a very controlled experience of customization. Yep. Like it's never, I don't know if it'll ever go as far as Android, where technically you can literally do whatever you want it, right? You can install different launchers and all these other things.
I don't see that. Although we didn't think we'd see new keyboards, and we do. So
yeah, but I have to be honest, like the changing of the fonts and the colors on the lock screen, that was a little farther than I thought they would go. Like the widgets, okay, that makes sense to me. Yeah, the Apple Watch has widgets. Why wouldn't you eventually add that to a lock screen or something like that? Doing like the cool photo effects they have, I think, okay, like all this other stuff. But the changing of like the fonts and stuff like that, like Apple's usually like pretty particular about like that kind of stuff. Yeah, sure. Very, very locked down, even to the point where like on the Apple Watch, they still give you all the watch faces. There's kind of no real big customization there as well. I almost wonder if maybe this is like a template for like making your own watch faces or something like that down the road. Maybe they could do a system like this where it's a little bit more open. But I was a little surprised they were letting you do all these different colors and fonts. And that isn't like, oh, look how customizable it is. It's more just like Apple has been pretty locked down with iPhone to a point where everything's looked the same. And we've come to expect it from Apple at this point, but it's almost a little bit off brand for them, considering they also like to pitch themselves as, especially on the Mac, as a platform for creative people and creative types. And if you're a creative person, you want to do something that is more personal to you. You want to add your own flair to it.
Yeah. And, if you're talking about letting people express themselves and you don't let them customize something, a lot of these companies talk about, no, you can express yourself in different ways. You can't if you can't allow people to change things, right? You're not expressing anything. Look like everyone else. So we'll see how far this goes. I like the idea. I'll be interested to see what the iPhone 14 Pros version of this is, and if they add a little extra sauce on top of it, so to speak. And the live activities, again, like I said, I think that's pretty cool, and I think that would be really great as a always on display option. So they got focus, which has always been pretty cool. You can filter focus. I think they added new apps to focus now. Sharing. Oh, the the sharing of photos with your family, which is interesting. So this was something that Austin Evans made fun of on Twitter about, taking pictures and having instantly share to your family and stuff, depending what the pictures are, which could be disastrous for some people. This is a small thing, but I noticed on Twitter that Andrew Edwards said that some people were saying that we're wrong about this, and that it doesn't have to be just with your family. It's any particular people, I guess. It's not just because you can have like iTunes family or whatever, right? But apparently you can share it with just anyone, any 6 people. So I could share it with you, and then someone from our chat, and then whatever, right? And then you'd always get updates on my pictures. So that's kind of neat. There's different use cases for that, and I like that.
Yeah. If we can share it with someone with the chat, I say, Travis, we auction off the ability to be on our shared photo list. You can get maybe every photo that me and Travis take. How much would you pay for that?
Well, right now, almost every picture that I actually take either ends up on my Instagram or my Twitter. So I mean, that's you'd have access to that basically.
There's a lot of photos I take that are not ending up on Twitter or Instagram. So
well, then you should add me to your shared photo library. So that's kind of neat. And again, it's something that people who are not techie would actually really love. Like they're thinking broader scope. I can appreciate that. Doesn't really, let's start the bidding. We're at $10. We're starting off at $10. We'll see where we end up at the end of the stream. $3.99 is next.
Just a preview. You could have this exclusive picture of pizza.
Oh, that actually looks like a good pizza.
Yeah, just for $10,000. That picture could be yours.
Wow, that looks fantastic.
That looks good, right? Like if you were, let's say we do like a Patreon style thing. I'll auction off the ability to see whatever photo I take, and you could get a picture of pizza just like this. How much would you pay for that, Travis?
Personally, not a whole bunch. All right. Smart ways to share. So share things based on the start date and people in the photos. So that's kind of neat. Like it definitely brings the whole, sharing option to another level.
You could live through me. You could
this next one is a big one. And it's such a big one for your everyday average person. And when they hear about it, they're going to love it. Being able to edit or take back your iMessages. Can you imagine how many conversations would be so different?
So
if not for this early.
This is a feature I tried to do.
Oh, okay.
And I found out, which makes sense. I found out that you cannot edit or unsend a message to anyone running an older version of iOS.
I figured that.
Yes. So it'll actually alert you to that too, which is good on them. They say if you undid a message, it won't unsend to anyone running iOS 15 or earlier. So I think life hack is you keep an old iPhone running iOS 15 and you can see, if someone unsends a message to you, well, you got it. You got the original message.
That's terrible, Greg. Well, let me ask you something. So first of all, I thought, and one of the things they also said is remaking a message unread so you could get to it later, which I like to use. A lot of times I will I'll see something come in, but I won't read it because I want the reminder for later. I actually thought you could already do this. I'm kind of blown away that you can't. So this is another good feature that I like is that, again, being able to mark something as unread so you can come back to it later on and be reminded of it. So I like that. These iMessage additions are small overall, but I think have a large impact and definitely help people appreciate iMessage even more. The people who use iMessage pretty much love it anyway. This is something where I don't know can you do this on like Android with like SMS with RCS? I maybe you can. I don't know. I'm not aware of this. Is that a thing? Regardless, it's a great addition to something that we've been looking for. I hadn't even thought about it in messaging. I think about it on Twitter all the time and stuff, but I think it's awesome. I think it's fantastic. And then SharePlay via message. I love SharePlay so much. I don't get to use it very often at all, but I love the concept of it. If you're not aware, it's things like streaming audio at the same time with someone else, or watching a video at the same time with someone else, or even using Apple Fitness, which I love, at the same time as someone else. This time you can start these things from iMessage themselves, which seems like something they probably should have started with to begin with. Like, hey, I'm going to talk to you here. I'm going to send this to you in the message. I don't know why that didn't come out when this came out, but it's out there now, which is great. And then some additional collaborative things you can do in iMessage. So there's some pretty cool things they put in iMessage, which I'm pretty happy about. It's something that gets used every day on your phone. So any kind of change or quality of life change is more impactful than some things that you might only use once or twice because it looks cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of small tweaks here that just add up into like a bigger update. Certainly than I was expecting. I just going into this event, I was like, what can they really change at this point that would, these operating systems are so advanced. It was, we're on the 16th version of iOS. We're about to get iPhone 14. Like, there's been so many phones, so many different software updates at this point. It seems like they've added almost everything that they could possibly add, but they keep finding a way to really add some cool features. One of the ones that I really liked with iOS 16 was, especially nowadays, people are always making like meme images of like cutting out like photos and stuff like that. And, you can do it on like Photoshop or something like that, but not everyone's paying for Photoshop, and then it requires like a certain selection of skill. On like iOS 16, yeah, you can see it right there. It just like automatically finds like a subject in a photo, and you could just like long press it, and you could just cut it out of the image and like send it as like a transparent PNG, like as like a sticker or something like that. It's really cool.
This is awesome, especially for creators. Like I basically do this on a website for all my thumbnails, right? And live text to me is still just an incredible and incredibly useful feature. I know it's been on Android or whatever, but it's just an incredibly useful feature. The live subject from background thing, I think, is great for creatives. I don't see the everyday use for the everyday person. As a matter of fact, I don't even see the use it more than twice a year for the everyday person. I might get a kick out of it and use it quite a bit. Again, creatives, I think, are going to use it a lot. But the thing that worries me is when something doesn't get used a lot of times it gets dropped between OS updates. So this one I'm a little concerned for because I like it a lot. I'm just unsure if it's going to get a lot of use because people have to understand, okay, well, what's the use case for this? Like the use case they showed was cute, but not like life-changing. Live text is great for a number of situations. And it's pretty easy to show those situations in video. So we'll see. I'm going to say it again. I like the live the live video thing. And I'm just a big fan of live text. And then the live text for quick actions, that anything that has to do with live text, I'm like over the moon for, because I just think it's so intelligent and just so useful.
Yeah.
Smarter dictation. You can now say things that come up with.
Oh, that is really cool. I do like the changes to that. It's almost like it's like persistent now. You just tap it, and it will basically stay on, and then you can use both. You can talk, and then maybe you can type something out. You can go back and select it. It's a really cool way to do the dictation feature. It makes it a lot more useful than it used to be, where it was more of like just sending in kind of like a voice request, and it just kept going. And then you couldn't really interact with the keyboard at all. This makes it so much more useful.
I'm curious. Yeah, I'm really curious how this is going to work, because I saw I need to watch it again. I saw the little thing that kind of showed how it worked, but I was slightly distracted by other things going on. So
yeah,
I can see a good use of this. I can definitely see a great use of this. But I think this is one of those things that, like anything else in software, I've said this before, the first time you use it, if it doesn't work, it's already strike 2. The second time you try to use something and it doesn't work, that's strike 3. Like, you don't get necessarily a third try at most things, for most people, right? So if people have already tried dictation and it hasn't worked well for them, they're probably not even going to learn that it got any better. For people that are trying this for the first time, I think they're going to be delightfully kind of satisfied by it. Looks like it's going to be something that's going to enhance using it. If people use it all the time, I think it'll be great. Yeah. So Rebecca says it'll be interesting to see how it works with accents. I don't know how current dictation works with accents. I'd love to see that in the chat. If you have a thick accent or something like that, is it working for you? If you change the Siri voice, does it automatically listen for that type of accent? I don't know. I'm not sure about that. Do you know?
I don't know. Yeah, I guess it would just be I guess it would just do its best to try and dictate. I'm sure they've thought about that. I'm sure they've had like different multiple accents trying to parse through voices and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, if we thought about it in the first couple minutes, I'm sure they did.
You would hope.
Maps, which is great. I can't wait till we get to the thing I want to talk about a lot. Maps is awesome. I'm glad they're doing some stuff. They're actually adding a new maps for Seattle, where I am, which is great. I want to see the kind of enhanced version.
Oh, you're getting the enhanced one?
Yeah. I'm getting Seattle's being added. And adding multiple stops, which I literally thought about yesterday as I was coming home and needed to get gas. I'm like, oh, it'd be so cool to just add gas. Yeah. Say, hey, add gas on the way home. Like, that would be so awesome. So this is something great. If you're riding the bus, transit cards and fares and maps is amazing. I used to ride the bus all the time in downtown Seattle. This would have been a lifesaver. Incredible. It is, again, when they first came out with maps, it was like, why? Google Maps is there. Google Earth exists. Like, why bother? But I can see why. They are putting their own vision of this. I think some of the stuff still does already exist in Google Maps, but and again, I still to this day think it seems like a wasted, like, you're spending a lot of money doing this. I don't think you even need to do this. You can just work with Google. I think you just do that. But regardless, they're doing it in their own thing. They don't want to rely on someone else for something so important. Maps is huge and important. So fair. Very excited for this.
All right. I'm looking at the time, Travis. We're already 30 minutes in.
Oh my God.
We have a lot to cover.
Okay.
There's a lot of improvements in iOS 16. We covered a bunch.
Okay. There's one I need to talk about.
No. I know what you want to talk about, which isn't necessarily iOS 16. We got to talk about CarPlay. Because I know that's like the coolest thing. Maybe they showed off with software. This is, I'm telling you, I look at the thing, I look at the little warning up there, Travis. Vehicle announcements coming in late 2023. That is quite a while away. That is not even early 2023. That is late 2023. That could basically mean almost like a year and a half away at this point. Travis, I look at this interface and I think, what car company is giving up all the real estate to Apple here?
Right.
I think it is a tall order. I don't know what kind of move this is. I don't know if it's a power move to put pressure on them. They gave out some like insane statistic. It was more than 70% of people deciding to buy a car in the US. It must have CarPlay was the stat they used. They would not buy a car without CarPlay. I feel exactly the same way at this point. I do not want a car after experiencing CarPlay. I do not want a car that does not have this feature. And I look at this interface. Number one, you got to be getting a pretty new car and a pretty premium car to get an interface that's looking like that with all the displays. I want to hear your thoughts on this, but I'm just going to say off like right now, that is the Apple car.
I mean, you might be right. If there is such a thing as an Apple car, you're probably right. It does look like this.
So, I feel like that is the interface pretty much for the Apple car.
I would believe that. It's still would be hard for me to wrap my head around the fact that Apple would make a car. Like I don't get the leap. I think it's risky AF. Obviously, it would be an electric car. Obviously, right? Like, it just feels very risky. Having said that, when they started to show the CarPlay stuff, because I love my CarPlay, I got overly excited because my particular car not only does it have CarPlay, it has a center port. So where the steering wheel is, where it says 45 and D. Again, if you're listening to the audio podcast, you need to come watch the YouTube video for this so you can understand what's going on. Because they're showing a display that doesn't exist on cars as far as I'm concerned, as far as I've seen. Like I haven't seen a display like this. However, my car does look something like this, as I have a big display that my CarPlay shows up, and my odometer and everything is completely digital. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to be able to do this. Little did I know, they're not even talking about this until late 2023, which means 2024. Did not know that. Second, because we're iOS 16. We're talking about iOS 16, which comes out this year. Why are we talking about this now? Like, I'm upset that they even talked about this now.
Yeah.
And then when they showed the cars, my car manufacturer wasn't on there, which also upset me. Not to mention the fact that it may not even work on cars that have the proper displays now in the future. So they might not even backwards compatible this thing. So this was the biggest spit in your eye, I feel like, of the entire thing, because it was something that seems so astronomically cool, yet almost no one's going to be able to take advantage of it. Like I was very much a kick in the nuts, because here's the other thing. A lot of the YouTube creators that were there are Tesla drivers. And what's the one thing apparently a Tesla doesn't have?
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy, by the way. What the hell is Tesla up to that they don't have CarPlay? That absolutely flips my wig. But this in a car makes me kind of want it. Having said that, if I can't have it in my existing car, which is a 2022, and you think I'm going to get a new car in 2024, you barking up the wrong tree. This thing is paid off. I ain't doing it again. So I would be disappointed if they didn't have some type of stripped down version of this for cars that exist that have a good entertainment system already. And I would also, by the way, be surprised if they didn't.
I think Apple, I think Apple will be willing to have all these things up there. The problem is the car manufacturers who are, maybe don't want this sort of system implemented. If they can't control the experience completely, and ceding maybe this much control to Apple in a world, maybe, I don't know, let's just be hopeful. Let's just say 10 years down the line, we're in a self-driving world. A big part of attention, which is basically what all these companies want at this point, is they want your attention, is going to be in the car. Who's not going to be, if you don't have to drive the car, what are you going to be doing in the car? You're going to be on the internet. You're going to be watching videos. You're going to be watching Gadget Cast, hopefully. And that's going to be all Gadget Cast on that main display. So ceding that control to Apple could be very dangerous. It could be, just like it could just be like AT&T giving up all the control to Apple when it comes to the phones. It was a smart move for them to do that at the time, but you look at how much control these carriers still have over Android phones, and they love that. There's a reason they don't want to give that up. So the car companies might be learning from this. They might say, listen, we like having CarPlay. It's a feature that customers want. It helps us sell a lot of cars, but you taking over the speedometer, like, can we really do that? And is that a liability thing? What happens if CarPlay crashes and all of a sudden your speedometer is not working? That could be like a huge liability thing as well. So I can almost understand the car manufacturer's point of view of ceding this much control to Apple, having no control over their interface. It's a scary thing as a car company, because if these self-driving cars become a thing, you really are missing out on maybe one of the biggest money-making opportunities as a car manufacturer to boost some of this revenue. You're giving it all to Apple again. And Apple has so much power that if customers want CarPlay, and if that stat is true, that 70% of people want CarPlay, and this comes out in 2023, and one car manufacturer has this feature and another doesn't, maybe their sales drop off completely. Like, who knows at this point, right? Like, if it's that powerful of a feature, if people want it, if Travis is going to buy his next car and his favorite car manufacturer doesn't have this feature and another one does, maybe he switches over, just like people back in the day were on Verizon. All of a sudden, they're switching over to AT&T just so they can buy an iPhone because it was the only carrier that had it.
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways to think of this. I'm not an expert in the car industry, so I don't know how much a car manufacturer cares about owning this part of the car. Maybe they care a lot. I don't know. But I do know one thing. It costs them money. So unlike a car 20 years ago that didn't have a system like this, that just had like a regular odometer, you shipped it out, you were done. These newer cars that get updates all the time, especially to the maps and stuff. Like mine gets map updates every couple of months. That costs them money. It's a drain. Unless they're charging for it, which most of them don't. That literally costs them money that they don't need to be spending. They could be spending that money elsewhere or using it as profit. So if I'm a car manufacturer, I would partner with Apple and say, look, we'll put if you don't have because not everyone has an iPhone, we'll put a kind of basic version of our thing in there and we're done. You guys do the advanced stuff. And that way I don't have to invest any more into all the cool things that everyone else is going to do. And I'm going to save the money. Now, that's what I would do. I'm not saying car manufacturers are thinking that way, but this would be an easy win. I'd be like, look, we're putting this next generation of CarPlay in my new Mercedes-Benz or whatever. We'll put in our normal little, things here and there. But if you want some awesome stuff, pay whatever it is, go get yourself an iPhone, you're good to go. That's how I look at it. It's an opportunity, I think, just as you just said, for car manufacturers to differentiate themselves from the ones that don't want to do it. And I think the ones that don't want to do it are going to be left behind because my guess is Android will come out with a similar version of this. And if they're not already working on it, they will be now because their Android Auto and CarPlay are a thing. And once both of them are in the game, there's almost no reason as a car manufacturer to not, which most do, support both. And in some way, just keep their stuff super basic because they don't really want to get involved. I don't know. We'll see, though. I'm sad that it's going to take so long.
Yeah, I just love the way that I love the way the maps look just right in the center of the steering wheel like that. I just think that looks so good. The interface for that, the concept that they did here is just it's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I have my car would be perfect for this. I don't have I don't have a display that's all the way over to the right, like right of the steering wheel, but I do have the big square that you see there, and then I do have a display that's right underneath my steering wheel that would work in. So I'm hoping that that's a thing that they do implement on my car. But I will say this, to talk about this so early seems weird.
It does seem weird. Yes.
Why are they doing this?
Yes.
Like, obviously you want the car manufacturers to get involved, but they showed a list of car manufacturers that are involved. Do you care about, like, as Apple, do you care about this leaking? Like, I don't think so. There's something weird about announcing something that won't be out for a couple of years in your software presentation that's coming out in a couple of months. Like, that makes zero sense to me. Renee, you're in chat. Tell us why. You're a smart guy.
Yeah, if this is late 2023, we will literally get another WWDC before this even comes out.
Probably because look, this says vehicle announcements. It doesn't even say the cars are going to be available. So the cars probably won't be available till 2024. Which is another WWDC, which is iOS, 18? Like, what are we talking about? This makes zero sense to me.
And people, like, I think, like, if, like, a normal year, like a CarPlay announcement kind of thing, most people would be like, boring. Like, any update to CarPlay at WWDC, people would not be hyped for this. This got so much attention. People were very excited for this update. And I don't know, it's very un-Apple-like in a way to kind of announce something so far ahead in the future. It almost just felt like a test bed of, let's show people this. We have such a cool idea that we are working on with CarPlay. Let's show them this. And I don't know if it's a way to gauge support for a future Apple car, or if it's just to pressure. Maybe this is just a way to pressure those car manufacturers. Maybe they had, like, meetings, behind the scenes, like, this is where we want CarPlay to be in 2 years. And maybe they had a lot of these car companies that, like you said, like, all of them weren't on board. Maybe this was a way to get the remaining ones on board because they put out that stat. Most people want CarPlay in their car. They will not buy a car without CarPlay in it. And hey, look at this new version of CarPlay we have, and look at the great reception we're going to get from it. And you're going to have people like Travis saying, I would not buy a car that did not have this. So maybe that's the strategy. Maybe it's not even about an Apple car. Maybe it's just to put pressure on those third parties to go, you know what? We were hesitant at first. We said no, but we have to have this. We have to have this feature.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm super excited for this. It's one of the biggest things that came out of WWDC for me personally.
I agree. This was one of the most exciting announcements. It made me want to buy a new car, and I don't really care too much about cars, so that's saying a lot. I just feel like, I know there's been so many rumors of Apple Car. It's been rumored for like the longest time, longer than the virtual reality headset at this point. But I just look at Tesla and I look at how much money as a company they have made in like their stock evaluation. And they're not even really that successful of a car company when you really look at the numbers, when you really break it down. They're not really selling numbers that would warrant how much their stock price is currently valued at. They're almost $1 trillion company, Tesla. That's kind of crazy to think about. They just sell cars. No other car manufacturer that makes cars, Ford, Honda, Hyundai, any of them, no one's near close worth to $1 trillion. But it's the potential. It's the potential of the revolution of the self-driving car and all the cars in the United States being replaced by electric cars. That's why the stock is valued so high, because there's so much potential there, even if it doesn't make sense today. And I just imagine Apple looking at that and going, Tesla itself is worth $1 trillion. That would add, if Apple made a car, that would add $1 trillion onto our stock. We have to be in this market. We have to be in this market. And I think Apple, it would be quite a challenge for them. Making cars is way different, but they would definitely have some unique advantages that only Apple could do. And as strong as this ecosystem is, what if the Apple car is the car to get and it works with your it could be such a strong move for them that I have to imagine they're very serious about. I mean, they are serious about it. We know that they've been hiring people, they've been doing all these sorts of things. So I just wonder, is this just kind of like a little preview of the Apple car?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're not going to see any of this in probably any 2023 cars.
Yeah, it'll be a while.
And they're not making announcements till the end of 2023. So we're talking about the earliest 2024 and maybe beyond. I think we have time for like one more thing. We want to talk about iPadOS, and then maybe we'll do a super show next week and then do, Mac OS.
Well, listen, I teased M2. I feel like I have to talk about it.
Let's talk about M2 then. Let's talk about
iPadOS real quick. I wanted to mention, I did want to talk about that because you are an iPad user. We don't have to spend too long on it, but let's just go. There's a couple updates to iPadOS. I think that whiteboard thing looks really cool, actually. I wouldn't mind having a GadgetCast whiteboard. That looks kind of really cool.
Let's talk about
what
is whiteboard? I forget
what the name is.
I know Stage Manager, which we'll have to talk about.
Let's talk about Stage Manager. That's what I want to talk about, because this is, in a way, a big deal. It is floating Windows on the iPad for the first time, and it's coupled with real external display support, where it's not a mirrored external display. It's an actual external display. And I believe on the external display, I think you can have up to 8 of these apps open at once. You're an iPad user. Does this speak to you? Is it an outdated way of thinking? Is it too small maybe for the iPad's display?
Yeah, so funny you say. So I have the 12.9 inch, and there's rumors of a 14 and 15 inch iPad Pro, which now makes more sense than ever. With this feature, that actually makes sense. Before that, I'm like, why? With this, it makes more sense, because I feel like in order to really take advantage of this, you do need a big screen. And I'm unsure how I feel about it yet. I need to play with it, because I only ever use apps in full screen. So having them windowed is not of an interest to me. Like, it doesn't do anything for me at all. Having the external display, I think, is cool. But then the problem is, I don't understand how I'm going to, how that's going to work for me. Because again, one of the things that I use an iPad for, and one of the reasons I like to use it, is because it's all touch. Once you're on a second display, that display is not touch. So now you've got to touch a display to reach the other display, or get a mouse, in which case I might as well use a laptop. So I don't see the productivity usefulness in it. I can see it as like LumaFusion, like you're putting up a video that you're editing and you want to see the full screen, but I think you can already do that. So I appreciate that they're trying to get more of a productivity powerhouse. And I can appreciate that it takes the power of the M1 to use it, which is something else that we could talk about. I think that when I was watching this, I never got the aha moment. I saw impressive use of software and hardware, and a actual thing that's on Mac OS come over to iPad OS, allegedly in its the exact same form, which is kind of amazing. But when it comes down to it, I don't want a smaller version of a window to work in on my iPad, and I don't want to not be able to touch the other display. So I'm a little I would have to play with it first to give a real thought, but that's my thought. Did you install this and try it?
Yes, I've installed it. I've tried it. Yeah, I think it's very rough right now. I can see the potential for it. I do want floating windows on the iPad, especially on these bigger screen ones like the 12.9 inch. I want more usage of that screen real estate. I would just say that right now they are placing some weird limitations on this that just don't make sense to me. I think the concept is good, but these are essentially Macs in hardware at this point. M1. They both have the same thing. They're the same in memory configurations. You know, the M1s get 8 and 16 gigabytes. This same thing with these iPads. They now have one of the most important features that really held back the iPad, and one of the reasons why this couldn't maybe be a thing before was memory swap. We had Renee Ritchie on the show tell us all the time, it's like, why isn't Final Cut on the iPad? They have M1 now. And Renee would go, well, they don't have a memory swap thing. So Final Cut is a very memory intensive program. If it ever used more than 8 gigabytes of memory, it would get kicked out and it would crash. And that would be just a bad experience. Well, Apple announced that memory swap is now a thing. And they even said, I was really surprised they didn't announce Final Cut or anything, because they literally said, we're bringing pro desktop apps, you know, to iPad. And I was like, oh, Final Cut. And it never happened. So I feel like it's in the works at this point. They have everything they need. Maybe it's just not ready yet. They probably do need a better touch friendly interface for it. So that's probably what's taking it, right? I don't think they would just take Final Cut for Mac and put it on there. I think that would be kind of more of a disappointment, even if that's what some people want. But they have everything to do what a Mac can do, but they still have to put this friendly thing on it because it's iPad. The iPad's supposed to be more user friendly, and the managing of windows in iPad it's cumbersome. You know, on Mac and Windows, you can resize a window anywhere. You can stop at any point, and it will be the size you want it at. And you can move it to anywhere on the screen, and it will do that. With the iPad, they try and make it more user friendly. You can kind of resize it to any kind of window, but not really. There are kind of like default points. There's a lot of them, but there are default points. It's kind of like snapping to a bigger window. And then when you move the window around, it might move the other window around. So on a Mac, you just move a window, it goes over it. It doesn't move the other window. But if you were to move that window that we have on display on the right to the left, it might take that other window and move it to the left, or it might move it down depending on its size. So it's always kind of doing something different with this window management that I don't understand why it's just not as free form as Mac OS. Like, why not just wherever we drag it, we drag it. Wherever we stop, we stop. You have the system there. I'm sure it has something to do maybe with the iPad's user interface. Maybe they'd have to rewrite all the apps to take advantage of it. I don't know. But at this point, it just seems very cumbersome. It feels like it's trying to be more user-friendly, but by being more user-friendly and being more limited, it's not as intuitive, because everyone who wants to use this feature, I think, is a Mac OS user. And people who are primarily using iPads, they probably don't care about this. They're probably like you. They're probably like, well, I'm just going to use a full screen app. Why would I want to use this? It doesn't make sense to me. I use it as a touchscreen. I don't use it as a keyboard and mouse kind of situation. So I think it's kind of unnecessarily user-friendly, and it doesn't need to be. And to the point, Travis, that this isn't the default iPad experience. I could understand if this was the default iPad experience. If you boot up iPad and this is what you saw, okay, make it user-friendly. This is a toggle in Control Center. This is a separate setting that you have to enable right now. So I don't understand why it's trying to manage the windows in the way it does. And I would want something that's just more Mac OS like at this point, because I feel like I feel like we're working at a system that is just, they will try this for 2 years and it will just eventually just take whatever macOS is doing. That's what it feels like at this point.
Yeah, we'll see what happens once this thing gets finalized and then put out, and I'll play around with it, of course.
Yeah. I will say, I think the external display part of it is the coolest part, and it's the thing that makes the most sense, because putting an iPad on an external display before, it really made no sense. It was a windowed version of your iPad. This is more like a DeX experience now.
Right.
That's the best way that I could describe it. It's more like a DeX thing. You plug it in, all your apps are there. I mean, if iPhone's getting USB-C, the iPhone could probably do that, right? Like, this is very DeX-like, where it's like, now it's Windows, use a keyboard and mouse, you just connect it to your monitor. It's kind of like a different operating system.
Yeah, I agree. We'll see where that ends up. I'm looking forward to playing around with that. And of course, a weather app on iPad OS. Let's quickly jump into what we saw, because everything else is pretty much the same. Let's talk a little bit about M2. And let's see what we think about that. So
listen, M2. I don't think we have to talk about the chip too much. We'll spend another time talking about the chip on another Gadget Cast. I think the chip, it's what you would expect from an M2 upgrade. It's pretty much just a better version of the M1. The one area where I will say I think the chip was a lot better than people were expecting. No one was talking about any rumors of the chip getting more memory, and I think that was a big deal. So now this maximum memory you can get on the M2 chip is 24 gigabytes instead of 16 gigabytes. And for a Mac user, I think that's a really big deal, because there was a hard limit of that 16 gigabytes where it was like, I just need a little bit more memory to really make this work for me. I don't need a $2,000 MacBook Pro. If I just had a little bit more memory, this would be all I need. And I felt like I was actually in that camp where I just need a little bit more memory. It would be fine. So the 24 gigabytes, I think, is a nice step up for these configurations. It really makes them fill more of a gap in Apple's lineup. So I'm very happy with that. The M2 itself just feels very much like M1 with improvements. It's going to be faster and all that stuff. But I feel like it's what we were expecting. I think the bigger announcement around M2 was the new MacBook Air with it. The whole redesign for the MacBook Air. You've used a MacBook Air before. Do you think this was the right design? Is there anything that you don't like about it?
So I liked the MacBook Air kind of tapering thing. To me, that was iconic. Yeah. I liked it. It was iconic. It let me know it was an Air. This just looks like a thinner MacBook Pro. And again, when I see it in person, maybe that's different. I'm, of course, way against the notch. I think that's at this point, it's serving no purpose other than branding. At this point, it's disgusting. I'm
pro notch. I think it looks nice.
I know you are. You're a terrible person. But the point is, the reason why I have a problem with it is because it doesn't have to be a notch. It doesn't. It could be a teardrop. It could be a round hole. It could be a little booty hole. It could be any of those other things. It does not have to be a notch. It does not have to be this wide. There's nothing in there that makes it have to be that wide. That's what I'm disgusted by. Now, having said that, I wish the blue was a lot more blue on the Air. It would make me want it. It's not blue enough for me to want to get one of these. Believe it or not, the color actually would have had a big impact on whether or not I got one of these. Same thing with the iMac. If the M2 iMac, if that doesn't look really cool, I will not replace the one I have now, because I love the one I have now. I like MagSafe. I've never had a laptop with MagSafe. That's kind of exciting. Of course, the battery life has to be excellent. It says it is. With the MacBook Air since M1, fanless, which is a joy to use. Powerful as ever. Now, I do want to see this whole thing about faster editing performance. I'm so absolutely interested in this. I want to know what the actual speed. So I hope when you get yours, you do a bunch of exporting things and stuff, because I need to know this. It says it's 3 times faster.
Well, another impressive thing about the M2 chip is they borrowed something that they did with the M1 Pro, and they put this dedicated video encoder on it. And that's one of the reasons why the M1 Pro and the Max, they're really great at exporting. They really handle those video files extremely well. And that's coming to the Air. That is a big upgrade for the M2, where the M1 did not have that kind of dedicated encoder for the system.
Yeah. So my only interest would be the video editing portion of it for the M2, especially on an iMac. And they're now when they compare it against an Intel-based MacBook Air, I don't know what the dual-core i5 is. Was that the last Intel MacBook Air?
It was the entry-level version. You could get a quad-core version, but you had to pay more money.
And how long ago was this thing? It is really.
Oh, that would be right before. That would be right before the M1 MacBook Air, which I think was actually released in
2020, 2019.
I think the M1 MacBook Air was released at the end of 2020, and the quad core is released at like just the beginning of 2020.
Yeah, so they're showing huge improvements,
and this is true. I mean, yeah, the M1 against this, I did comparisons when that came out, and it was night and day. It was the biggest leap ever in terms of performance. The old MacBook Air, you never expected it to do any sort of 4K video editing. You never would want to do it on it. And all of a sudden they come out with the M1 chip. And that was the most impressive part, comparing that old MacBook Air against the new one. It's like, this thing operates more like a pro laptop than a MacBook Air. And it was just a complete paradigm shift for that laptop.
Yeah, and I remember saying a long time ago that when I got the MacBook Air, how impressed I was with the screen. Even though it was a regular LCD screen, I expect that to be the same here. A better FaceTime camera, the 3-mic array, Touch ID, all the cool things that make a MacBook Air awesome. Now, the one thing that changed quite a bit was the pricing, because they didn't get rid of the M1 MacBook Air. Well, so what they did was they just kept the MacBook Air M1 version. So I kind of get it. Whether or not this is because of the pricing. So for people who don't know, it's $1,200 before you change anything, right? I mean, obviously, most of the times you don't want the base model of anything, but if you are cool with the base model, $1,200. The MacBook Air M1 version stays at $1,000. Still a great deal. I would say that I think as much of this has to do with what's going on in the world and chip shortages and stuff as anything, that probably impacts it. Gas is ridiculous, so I'm assuming that has something to do with this. I wonder.
Yeah.
I wonder if that wasn't the case, would this have been this price?
Yeah, it's very hard to tell. There's definitely inflation's a big thing in the news right now. Are we to expect Apple not to experience any inflation price increases when literally everything is getting a price increase? I was looking at the price of cars recently to see if there's a car with new CarPlay, and they're basically selling cars above market price at this point, which usually doesn't happen. Usually you walk into a dealership and you can get them to negotiate it down a little bit. So Apple is definitely getting hit by this. They make a pretty healthy margin, so maybe they could absorb it, but it looks like they've raised price to kind of combat this. They know these things, I think, are going to fly off the shelves. The MacBook Pros came out half a year ago, and you still cannot order one and get it in a timely manner. When I checked for my video doing the research, you can order a MacBook Pro today. You won't get one until August. So these things are going to fly off the shelves at this $1,200 price point. They know that. I'm sure they're not just pricing it because of that. I'm sure it is the inflation impacting them. It's a new hardware design, so it's not like they can even use the older bodies and stuff like that maybe they've already built. They have to build a whole new design and with all new materials. So I'm sure that is impacting the costs to make it to this price point. I think they would have launched this I feel like I want to say they would have released this at $1,000. There was rumors for a while. We've been waiting for this laptop for a long time. There was rumors for a while that this was going to have a mini LED display, and they actually took that out of the product. I can only imagine that they maybe were targeting a $1,200 price point, and they were going to have the mini LED, and keep the M1 Air, and maybe this product became less premium over time. Maybe they were targeting a $1,200 with mini LED, and they had to get rid of mini LED and still keep it $1,200 because of everything going on.
Yeah. There's also, much like what Apple's been doing over the last couple of years, which is confusing to average consumers, the differences in GPU cores. In this particular case, it's 8 and 10 or 8 and 8.
Go ahead.
I think didn't you do a test on this last year and found that there really wasn't much, if any, difference between the two? For most people?
I probably did some sort of test. Yeah, it's a very small difference. Well, last year it was 1 GPU core difference. So at least this time it's 2. Maybe that makes more of a difference this time. I will say though that if you're confused by this, if you go to this page and you are confused, get the first option, because if you don't know I don't know if I need 8 or 10 GPU cores, then you don't need the GPU cores. Like, honestly, like if you're confused by it, don't get it. It's probably not going to be worth it for really anyone unless you're playing some games. I thought that was an interesting announcement. Maybe we can talk more about that next week, that they're bringing like Resident Evil over and using like native frameworks. We were talking about how maybe Apple might want to get more into gaming. I think maybe we saw a little bit of a push of that. I'm still very skeptical because Apple just never seems to figure out gaming. But they were saying that that Resident Evil, which is a very recent game, can run in 1080p on the new MacBook Air. So that's actually pretty amazing when you consider this thing doesn't have a fan in it. Like, that would be pretty amazing to see how a game that's actually built for these M1 or now M2 chips runs on this computer. If that can run Resident Evil in 1080, I would be very happy with that for a laptop performance.
I think the two things that you would want to consider as someone buying this, and we'll dig more into it next week, is RAM upgrade and storage upgrade. So I think most people agreed last year, especially since you can't do the upgrade later, that just getting more RAM, that you can, as much RAM as you can afford up front, is the right move. I would also argue that storage might be the same thing, although your solution is pretty easy for storage, where you could have a external USB, drive or something, or a Thunderbolt drive or something. So you at least have some wiggle room out of that if 256 is not enough for you. RAM is like, you get it and you need it and you can't upgrade it. So I say that if you have to choose between any of the upgrades and you'd only have a certain amount of budget, go RAM first, storage second, GPU third. Do you agree, disagree, same?
It depends on the user, I think. If you're using it for performance, you definitely want to focus on RAM first. If you're a basic user, I feel like storage might be more impactful. Dealing with low storage is always just a huge pain. So if you're not doing much, if you're just web browsing, writing notes, word processing, I think 8 gigabytes with the M2 architecture is going to be fine. It handles memory very well. I would say focus on storage. If you're performance, though, you definitely have to focus on memory. If you're doing any sort of video editing on this thing, which you can do on a MacBook Air, which is really nice, actually, I would definitely say 16 gigabytes is a minimum. You might want to go 24, but 16 gigabytes is definitely the minimum. You do not want an 8 gigabyte configuration doing any sort of video editing.
And we also don't know. Did you get the new Mac OS?
Yes. I haven't really played around with it too much, though, to be honest. I've been focusing more on iPad.
The only reason I asked is because I wonder how, I assume, but I wonder how it runs on 8 gigs of RAM. I think that's the other thing to consider.
And I didn't install it on a system that has 8 gigs, so I can't tell you. And also, it's a beta, so that would be unfair for me to tell you if it's good or not, because the betas run sluggish on anything, so it wouldn't be fair. But yeah, I wonder too if it's like a big thing. But I'm sure it'll be fine for basic. Yeah.
We'll get into it more next episode. Obviously, if you missed last week, go ahead and go to youtube.com/gadgetcast, hit all the things, subscribe and do all the things. And we'll see if maybe it makes sense to have some of we'll do another supercast. That would be fun if we can get the guys to come through. It'd be lots of fun. See what they're excited for. Since Renee was actually there, I'd love to hear some of his stories. And I was kind of surprised that some people were there. I'm surprised that Luke wasn't. I know Gary could have gone, but he had other things he had to do.
Yes.
Luke
was not surprised that was there. I'm not surprised that Luke wasn't there.
Sam was there, and by association with John Prosser, I'm a little
slightly Sam surprised. Got there because they did a thing this year where if you are part of the developer beta, if you're part of a developer program, it's $100 year program. They raffled off the tickets. Sam did not get invited as media. He got lucky. He won the raffle to go to this thing as a developer. Which I did not apply to this thing. I did not try to get a ticket because I went, well, I get this program to install the betas. I'm not a developer. I'm not going to take someone's spot. But, Sam did. He did not go as media.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. All right. Well,
it makes sense, right? You think the Apple people saw him and were just like, oh, we let this guy in.
It's not like he's online by any other name, but I guess the people who would be looking at that stuff, they wouldn't even think of that sort of thing. Yeah.
No, I don't think they'd have a second thought. I think they would just go, here are the winners. It's random. Here you go. Yeah. I don't think they thought, this guy
that does that podcast with Prosser.
This guy owns a leaking website and hosts a podcast with our number one enemy, John Prosser. I don't think they thought that too thoroughly, but maybe some Apple execs saw him and went, "Wait a minute."
What? Greg just fell out. Anywho, I think Greg's thing just died. I think Greg's camera or something died. Anyway, that'll do it for us this week. We'll see you guys and gals next week. He's Greg. I'm Travis. This is Gadget. Now I don't know what happened to Greg. Greg. Gotta speak to Josh, who's very friendly with him. Oh, I mean, yeah, he probably would in person, but he's not gonna kick him in the nuts or anything. Yeah, I know. As soon as he started talking about Sam, he got dropped. Oh my god, that's hilarious. I don't know if I don't know if his everything. Yeah, he died. Okay, he dead. All right. Well, anyway, it's fine. We don't need him anymore. It's fine that it happened at the end, right? Better at the end than in the beginning or middle. I started up the countdown for the live stream and he wasn't even here. I didn't know when he was coming. So he came in during the countdown. So it's just one of those things. Even though he was with Brian Jong, oh, that's hilarious from the video section. That's kind of funny. Well, if you're wearing the wrong thing, so that makes sense. Okay, anyway, we'll see you guys and gals next week. Thank you so much for